Hello folks, I'm really happy to see you here at my 7th class in this course. So we'll learn quite a lot, and today we have yet one more thing to learn. And that's what I personally, it's not kind of a well-known term, but I call it controlling structures, or it's also called verb patterns. So we'll talk about this concept today, and it's kind of a whole new thing to learn. So please be patient, take time to practice that, make sure you do homework, and let's just dive in. So first things first, let's imagine a situation. So we have a person, let's say one person, who's a subject, the father, and we have an object, the other person, Harry. And we have certain relationships between them. So basically, the father wants, right? That's what the father does. He wants. And he wants, what does he want? So his son does his homework. That's what. So we have a subject with the verb, the father wants, and then what he wants. His son does his homework. So in English, we have a special way to connect these two structures, and it's called controlling, because see, the father wants to control his son, right? When we have one person who wants to control the other person, his father doesn't care anyway, so that's why we have the situation of the control. So you already learned many ways to connect short sentences into the long sentences. So maybe you would say, Artyom, why can't I just say the father wants that his son does his homework? Well, because in English we cannot do that. I'm sorry. So we have certain verbs that cannot use that clause after them. And a big group of these verbs that can do that is called controlling verbs. Again, at least I call them controlling because they are used to control people. Want, for example. So that's not the way. What's the why though? First, let's talk about these controlling verbs. It's not only just want. We have quite a few verbs in English which we use to control people. So basically, it still has the same function as any other verb in the sentence, subject, verb, object, but then it has this controlled object. So when this verb has the control over the person or thing that comes after it. So for example, ask. When you ask somebody, you kind of control them in a way. Or when you teach somebody, right, you also kind of control or order or tell, right? So in all these situations, let's say we have Harry, so we ask Harry, we teach Harry, we order Harry, right? So we control Harry and to do something. So I can ask Harry to speak English. So that's my way of controlling Harry, right? So maybe Harry doesn't want it, but that's my control over him. I ask him to do something, to learn English or to speak English. I can teach Harry to speak English. I can order Harry to speak English. So you cannot say, I asked Harry that he speaks English. No. Because ask or teach or order or want and a few more verbs are controlling verbs and they cannot be used with that. That clause doesn't get across the idea of the control. So that's why the best way of doing this is to say the father wanted Harry to do his homework. So we can connect the father want and Harry does his homework by means of using this controlling verb pattern. So the father wanted Harry to do his homework. So how to form a structure like that? I mean, I already kind of showed you, but let me unpack it a little bit. So we have the controlling verb. First, it's ask, want, order, tell, instruct, advise. Any kind of a verb that has this idea of controlling another person, like another person's actions. So then we have the controlled object. It can be Harry or you, but be careful. If it's, for example, let's say he, so you don't say I ask he, right? We have a special form, right? Accusative form. I ask him. I asked her. We don't say ask we, yeah? So, or they asked we, they asked us. So make sure you're careful with the forms. So then you have the activity which you want another person to do, but with the infinitive. So this infinitive here shows this control. To speak, to imagine, to listen. And it's important not to skip this to. Again, because if you skip it, then you don't get across the idea of the control. So, I mean, of course, we have exceptions, but that's the general idea. So, I asked Harry to speak English. I want him to imagine a horse. They instructed her to listen to, I don't know, to the adults. So, that's why make sure you don't skip this to, and of course, make sure you practice this kind of structures. So, in the video from for the homework, so we have the sentence, if I ask an English speaker to differentiate these colors, he would. So ask an English speaker, ask the controlling verb, an English speaker is the controlled object, then to differentiate is to verb, then everything else, of course. So let's practice. Let's just take a little bit of this kind of a form. I don't want to go too deep into that before you try it, because you need to really try it. So what do you need to do? So you can see a few words and of course kind of equation with plus. What do you need to do? You need to combine these words to get the control structure. So you have I, you, want, close your eyes. So I would be the controlling person, you the controlled object, want the controlling verb, close is just to infinitive. So I want you to close your eyes, right? Now, let's see. So first we have subject plus controlling verb, I want, yeah, I want controlling verb. Then we have object, you here, then to verb, to close, then everything else, your eyes. So let's practice. John, his son, asked, practice Japanese. So again, make sure you pause the video. First you say what you think it should be, then unpause and listen to me saying it and repeat after me. So, first one. John asks his son, right? Controlling verb, controlled object, to practice Japanese. John asks his son to practice Japanese. Next, the teacher we tell keep track of time. So, to be honest, I would use past simple here. So the teacher told us, again, we, us, be careful. The teacher told us to keep track of time. She won't express herself in a new way. Again, be careful with the form of she. I want her to express herself in a new way. Right? So basically, that's the idea. Of course, I want to add on top of that sometimes we can use the passive form of the verb for the same function. So, for example, I can say, he taught me to use this trick, right? Well, it's the active form. He taught me. He actively did. But what if I want to talk about myself? I don't know who taught me, right? And it's not important. It's important that I got this instruction. So then I can get the structure. I was taught. We know how passive works. But anyways, then you can use again this controlled structure in the same way you would use in the active voice. I was taught to use this trick. I was asked to come. I was told to bring the textbook, right? So we have the verb, then the object, then to verb. But in the passive, it's going to be object first, because, in the passive, the sentence starts from the object. Then be, I was, then the verb in the third form. I was taught, I was asked, I was told, I was instructed, and to do something. So, again, I want you to practice a little bit. So here you can see the sentences in active. You need to make them still controlling, but in passive. So let me give you an example. Like, he asked me to translate it. I was asked to translate it. The same idea. It's just For example, it's not important that it was he or she or whoever. Try the second one. Pause the video, try it, then listen to me saying it. So the teacher told the students to prepare. So the students were told to prepare. Next, I advised them to visit this place. Again, pause the video. Think what's saying here? They were advised to visit this place. Right? So those are equally good, useful structures. Feel free to use them just as well. Okay? Again, in your homework, you have a chance to practice that too. So that would be the correct way of putting the sentences. So make sure you check yourself. Well, so we have exceptions to the rule. Specifically, we have make, let, and help. So these words are special words. They're controlling the verbs too. I can make somebody, or let somebody, or help somebody do something. But unlike any other controlling verbs, for some reason, not a logical one, they don't require infinitive. I know it's annoying, but we just have to memorize that, I guess, folks. So, but otherwise it's the same. Make, let, help, then control object, then verb without to. So, for example, linguists make us believe that languages affect our thinking. Linguists make us believe. But linguists ask us to believe. Linguists want us to believe, right? So now let's practice with this one. So try to construct this one. So make sure you don't say to, right? So it should go like that. Our experience let us understand the beauty of the language. And this famous phrase, let us go, let's go, that's the controlling structure too. With let us go. So with the controlled object, with the controlling verb. So see, maybe from the first months of your English learning journey, you have already kind of learned the structure. So now, of course, I want you to hear it. It's important not just to know about that, but also to hear that. So let me play this little excerpt for you. Hear it too.
If your language and your culture trains you to do it, actually, you can do it.
So if your language and your culture, you can actually do it. So try to hear, so the controlling verb here, right? Let's start from the controlling verb.
If your language and your culture trains you to do it, actually, you can do it.
So the controlling verb is train. So if your language and your culture train, or train, maybe, let's listen more carefully, and then let's try to hear the object, right, and the action, which is control. So one moment.
If your language and your culture trains you to do it, actually, you can do it.
If your language and culture trains you to do it, trains you to do it. The same kind of idea. Let's move on. So, one moment, guys, all right.
The government is trying to force Britain, or rather Airstrip 1, to use Newspeak, a constructed language that would end thought.
So here, the government is trying to do what? So what is the controlling verb?
The government is trying to force Britain, or rather Airstrip 1, to use Newspeak, a constructed language that would end thought.
So here, the controlling verb is force. So the government is trying to force Britain, right? Britain is the object, controlled object. And then he says, or rather Airstrip 1, it's the name for Britain in this novel 1984. So the government is trying to force Britain, Newspeak. Let's listen once again.
The government is trying to force Britain, or rather Airstrip 1, to use Newspeak, a constructed language.
Again, to use Newspeak. So the government is trying to force Britain to use Newspeak. So it's really important for you doing your homework and just practicing to hear it, to notice that, because native speakers use it a lot, okay? So again, don't forget, basically, we do the theory. Now, this video is your theory. Then we do homework. We come to class to practice that. We do writing this week too for in post, where you will try to use controlling structures. And we do speaking. So, that's will be it for today. Hopefully you learned a lot. So make sure you get in touch with me if you have any questions. And see you next week.